Hey folks, Gabe's dad here, Anthony Spizzato. This is it. This is the final weekend before Election Day. I want to start by saying thank you to all the folks who have made phone calls, sent emails, or already voted to write me in as a candidate for Sayreville Board of Education under that personal choice column on your ballot. To everyone who has publicly endorsed this community initiative to have a candidate who represents more of what we all stand for as a borough, on behalf of myself and my family, I won't ever be able to thank you enough. I do still carry guilt for not getting across the finish line in 2021, and I know that this year's election as a write in is even more difficult. But I know Sayreville, and I know that for us, hard work is good work, and good work is worth doing. So here is what we are fighting for together. We are fighting for a smartly funded public school system that educates and protects all of our kids and supports the teachers and staff who are doing that work. Sayreville's teachers are incredible and resilient and dedicated beyond words, and they deserve a Board of Education that continues to acknowledge their contributions to the lives of Sayreville kids, of our kids. We're fighting for an education for those kids that is rich and diverse, that celebrates other cultures and invites participation from all families. My son has more knowledge of other cultures, other races, and other families than I ever had growing up. And I think that makes him kinder and more empathetic, more cultured, smarter, and more understanding. This borough, by way of who we are as a community, is helping educate my son in ways that I never could on my own. That's what we are fighting for. We are fighting for actual, real, tangible parental involvement. I have proposed the creation of the Sayreville Schools Community Coalition, a monthly online town hall where stakeholders and decision makers and parents can come together to share thoughts and ideas, feedback, struggles, and successes. I want to incentivize participation in that coalition creatively with community partners and businesses. I know that there are teachers, PTO leaders, board members who are practically begging for more parents to come out and get involved. I would also seek support from fellow board members to increase the amount of time that we as residents are allowed to speak at board meetings. Now, listen, I don't want to get you involved by scaring you or by misleading you. I want you to come with me to get involved together because being part of this community has been one of the most fulfilling experiences of my entire adult life. And we're fighting for some of our most vulnerable students, those in the LGBTQ community, whose protections under Policy 5756 are critical. Carrie, Letty, and Katya have talked about the rise in bullying since Policy 5756 has been implemented, which sounds scary, which sounds like the policy isn't doing what it was intended to do, which is protect kids. The truth behind that number is that as a state, we have started reporting more bullying. We've empowered our kids to speak out about their experience in schools. We've helped them be brave. We've taught them to seek out support and help from the established resources that we have. And they're doing it. The number is ultimately an increase in kids who are being empowered to ask for help. And this district offers an incredible amount of support when that happens. If we rescind this policy, we have heard from attorneys, the superintendent, the Board of Education, and those who know better than any single candidate running for election to the Board of Education, this one included. We will still be bound by the New Jersey law against discrimination, which protects our LGBTQ students. In fact, just last week, the Edison Board of Education voted to keep 5756 in place after previously considering its removal and almost removing it. But that Board of Education stopped time and they listened to the people whose lives were directly affected by the policy, and they changed their mind. What a lesson for our kids that with knowledge, with empathy, comes decision making that can actually do good. Now, here in Sayreville, we've had 5756 for many years, certainly longer than the current candidates have been involved. You have to ask yourself, why is there a sudden threat from a policy that has existed for many years prior to this election? Other candidates may offer you fear because they assume you won't know better. I like to offer facts because you deserve them. Wiser folks than me have often called on us to be not afraid. It is not being LGBTQ that causes our kids to harm themselves or ideate towards suicide. Rather, the facts have shown that it is the lack of a single supportive person in a child's family or community that causes kids to feel that they don't have a way forward. And having candidates supported by people who believe our LGBTQ kids are suffering from a mental disorder, an illness, a sickness, or that their identity, the fabric of who they are, will somehow just go away over time if we ignore it. You can feel however you need to feel about that. I know how I feel. I feel that our kids need our love and our support, not just from their families, who in Sayreville have been overwhelmingly supportive, but from their community as a whole. We have to do better for those who can't. We are fighting for truth and actual transparency because we know that truth will always win the day over fear. I know how important the value of transparency is to people running races this election cycle up and down the ballot. So, to my fellow parents with kids in the district right now, I need you to know we have full access to what our children are being taught in schools. And while I cannot believe that I am saying this, our kids are not being indoctrinated. Our kids are not being groomed. Our kids are not being introduced to wild, fantastical, objectionable ideas. It is an election year. All of our kids' curriculum was sent to us as parents multiple times before being approved. All of our kids' curriculum is posted online. We can view it anytime we would like. And in the case of our health curriculum, if there is something that we as parents find objectionable, we are welcome and able to join the other small set of parents who have exercised their right to opt their child out. We can handle those sensitive topics ourselves if we choose. I support that right. I am running to defend that actual right. But I'm also running because there are other candidates who are not telling you the truth about the rights that you already have as parents, the rights you have always had as parents, and the rights you will always retain as parents. And we are fighting because we as a community understand that my beliefs shouldn't affect your rights, or vice versa. I don't talk about my own faith very frequently because it should not come into the discussion of policy in public education. But let me open up here. I am Catholic. I was raised Catholic. I was an altar server, a lector, an active volunteer in the Knights of Columbus alongside my grandfather, who was a veteran and retired chief in the New York Fire Department for almost 30 years. I went to Seton Hall. I became ordained years ago to be able to officiate for our closest family and friends for weddings. Now, while we were as far apart on politics as you can imagine, when my grandfather passed away, they asked me to do his eulogy, to speak to service and sacrifice, and his deeply rooted faith to hundreds of his fellow service members. But I have never taken a vote. I have never been influenced. And I would never allow the private nature of my own faith to impact your kids, who come from families that may not share my own personal religious beliefs. You deserve more than a policy that comes from a singular view of the world. A vote should come from listening and learning and building coalitions to effect the best change, the best policy, the best program, and the best funding. And it comes from knowing that we are stronger together in consideration of and with respect to our own different lived experiences and values. We make us better. Your voices are our strength. I've served this community the way I saw my grandfather serve his, through volunteerism, through serving on boards like the Sayreville Environmental Commission and the Planning Board, informed by my grandfather's military service, and in wanting my son to know about the service of our military for years to come, I was proud to stand with the residents of Morgan to protect the PFC Wayne Grant Field years ago. I was proud to do that with you. I was proud of my work to have commitment to more green spaces, more trees, more open spaces, written directly into our borough's governing plan, our master plan, because I feel that you do. Our kids deserve a Sayreville that looks and feels like the one that my neighbors described from their childhood. As part of a coalition, and with the power of a single vote, I helped make that so. I also pushed back when our superintendent presented plans to the planning board for the new bus depot, which included an on-site training center. They had not conducted an environmental study in a location where they wanted people to work, and had not conducted a traffic study in a community where we as residents are most greatly affected. I remember the borough survey that was sent out. The two biggest issues that residents expressed concern for were the environment and traffic. I opposed the bus depot there, publicly and privately. Now, the borough and the board have not sat down together to seek a solution for a new location, as I encouraged them to do from my seat on the dais, and as I have continued to do from my seat at home. This is now the subject of extremely costly litigation. what my grandfather would have probably referred to in more colorful language than wasteful spending with his buddies at the firehouse. But I keep him in mind when I remember that we are fighting this year alongside the Sayreville Historical Society to save our firehouse on Main Street. As part of the Preservation Committee, it has been such a privilege to learn even more about advocacy from those in our community whose record of service far outshines my own, whose views on politics are at odds with my own. I have been able to watch the work and the planning from what seems to be an endless amount of energy to do what is right. I am joining thousands who are voting yes to save the firehouse, and I hope you will join us too. Because our history, our stories matter, not just those from our past, but those that come next. The stories we tell together, side by side, and yes, brick by brick. Over the course of the last few years, years I have spent in service to our kids, our neighbors, and our community, I have given you my very best. Whether it's over coffee at Bombers Beyond, chats in aisle 9 of ShopRite, or online through social media, I have never shied away from difficult conversations, from being challenged, from being pushed. And in turn, you have given me the grace to push back, to teach and to learn. When you vote this year, I'm asking for you to select personal choice on your ballot and write in my name. And while I'm proudest to be Gabe's dad, this time at least, I'll need you to write out Anthony Spizzato. If you're voting on election day, you'll need to push personal choice and then type my name letter by letter in the keypad that pops up on your screen. It is work. But remember, hard work is good work, and good work is worth doing. If we can do this together, the Board of Education seat that will be given to me will be given to all of us. That seat belongs to parents and to teachers and to volunteers and community leaders. It belongs to our underserved communities who deserve a place at the table where decisions are made. And it belongs to the people whose lives are too busy with school schedules to run for the board themselves, but who care deeply about the world we build for our kids together. You can vote early in person at the Sayreville Senior Center at 423 Main Street, or you can vote in person on November 5th. On behalf of my family, I want to thank you all for your time, for your confidence, and for your trust. There is no limit on what we can do for our kids when we remember to use our powers for good. Thank you, Sayreville, for every kindness you have ever shown my family. It's a debt I will spend a lifetime working to repay. Now go vote.
I'm Gabe Spizzato, and I approve this message.